Paul McCartney's frog chorus can fuck off. You want a frog chorus? Right now, the people of Kekistan, the disparate and displaced Kek refugees, are pleading for your help. Welcome to the Weird Net. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was LOL. Originally used as an online expression of mirth, it became diluted to near homeopathic levels through widespread use and inaccurate, interminable variations. Honestly though, how many times has your arse actually fallen off when you write LMAO? Don't even get me started on the logistical problems presented by ROFL. But anyway, LOL fell out of fashion with the cool kids, and so it fell to the meme farmers, the Chans, and the gamers to seek out a new shibboleth. In 2004, Blizzard Entertainment released World of Warcraft, which I know seems totally unrelated, but bear with me. As an MMORPG, World of Warcraft offered players all over the world the opportunity to team up and battle complete strangers in the world of steampunk saboteurs and fantasy foes. Using the in-game text chat system, members of the same team could communicate with each other, as you would expect, but the system had an interesting idiosyncrasy. When members of opposing groups tried to communicate, the in-game translator would obscure their words so that one wouldn't be able to understand the other, as the Alliance and the Horde and World both speak different languages. It was a nice touch, and it added something to the dynamic between the two sides, emphasising the otherness of the opponent in this alternative online world. This algorithmic alteration led to one phrase in particular being changed whenever spoken by a Horde member to an Alliance member. When LOL was typed, as in LOL, I just pumped your mum, it would be rendered as the word kek. Now, stories vary on the origin of the word kek within World of Warcraft, but the most plausible one traces it back to keke, apparently the Korean equivalent of haha, which was popular with players of StarCraft, another title developed by Blizzard Entertainment. It appears that the developers appropriated this and used it as part of the in-game language as a replacement for LOL, but it's doubtful that they had any idea of the impact their most likely completely arbitrary choice would have. By 2005, the word had been adopted by Anons and, for better or worse, had been given its own entry on Urban Dictionary, breaking free of World of Warcraft and becoming part of Chan culture. It wasn't until 10 years later when a scholarly Anon pointed out an intriguing correspondence between Kek and a certain, often misunderstood cartoon frog that the real fun would begin. In the first in a series of odd synchronicities, 2005 also saw the birth of the character who had become intrinsically linked to Kek. Pepe the Frog was created by Matt Fury as part of his comic book Boys Club, which he initially published online via MySpace and sites like Tumblr, but later removed once the hard copy was released in 2006. Pepe was an anthropomorphic stoner frog who, in the first issue of Fury's comic book, was shown taking a piss with his trousers around his ankles. When asked about this childish behaviour, Pepe simply replies with a satisfied expression on his face that it feels good, man. It was this phrase and a cropped shot of Pepe's contented face that would go on to become one of the most endearing memes ever created. By the time Fury took his images offline, it was too late. Pepe had taken on a life of his own, morphing into various forms such as Sad Pepe and Smug Pepe, as it became a go-to reaction picture. By 2008, Pepe had made his way onto 4chan's infamous B, where he quickly became a hero of sorts. Given the flexibility of the meme, it was rare to see a thread without at least one image of Pepe, and the ever-creative Anons produced countless variations, placing the innocent frog into all sorts of situations, or presenting them as various figures from history or popular culture. Gradually, as with all memes, the normies attempted to take Pepe for their own, much to the upset of the Anons, especially those of Paul, where Pepe had been adopted as their unofficial mascot. When Katy Perry tweeted a Pepe meme in 2014, Anons realised that action had to be taken to rescue her beloved frog from the hands of the masses before he went the way of that boy, A meme that was shite to begin with, but just got even shiter once it found its way into Normie land. As any sensible group would do in such a situation, Anon decided that the best way to dissuade the normies from stealing Pepe would be to tell everyone that he was actually a white supremacist symbol. Now, remember, 4chan have pulled off a number of successful hoaxes over the years, from causing countless iPhone users to fuck their phones by telling them that they're waterproof, to causing people to cut themselves in the name of Justin Bieber, so to undermine their abilities would have been foolish. True to form, word seeped out onto the internet that Pepe was actually a secret symbol used to identify white supremacists, and so usage by the normies all but ceased fairly quickly. This may seem like an extreme path to take to some, and some may think that I'm just making excuses for a bunch of trolls and racists, but the screen grabs of the threads themselves where the hoax was planned are still available online. People forget, probably by choice, that 4chan is the home of shitposting, and they've been trolling the real world like this for almost 15 years now, so it's naive to ever take anything they say or do at face value. Anyway, with Pepe now rescued from the normies and his image purposely tarnished to save the lulz, 4chan and Paul rejoiced and returned to their usual shitposts and satire, remaining fairly quiet for a while until the completely unexpected happened. In June 2015, businessman and TV celebrity Donald Trump announced his intent to run for election as President of the United States of America, much to the delight of Paul, since he was a guy who reflected their own disdain for the politically correct and wasn't shy in speaking his mind. To the residents of Paul, he wasn't just a presidential candidate. They declared him God Emperor Trump, this superhuman figure who would put an end to the corruption within government and kill off identity politics. In tribute to Trump, a special Pepe was made wearing one of Trump's now famous red Make America Great Again hats, which quickly went viral, appearing everywhere from Facebook to bodybuilding forums. This would mark the start of what became known as the Great Meme War, a directed and sustained informational attack designed to influence people to vote for Donald Trump rather than Hillary Clinton via dissemination of memes through the internet. In October of that year, even Trump himself would be tweeting Pepe memes depicting him as president, much to the elation of Paul. It appeared as though Trump was aware of their efforts and approved, thus strengthening their support for him and the MAGA campaign. A series of peculiar synchronicities arose during this time involving Pepe, Trump and 4chan, as well as the discovery by the aforementioned scholarly Anon regarding connections between Pepe, Kek and an ancient Egyptian god. We'll look into that side of things more soon, but to cut a long story short, some weird stuff involving numbers and frog gods happened, and then Anons started referring to themselves as Kekistanis. Like I said, we'll look into it gets weirder, trust me. While the Donald campaigned, the Kekistanis were trading rare Pepes online, selling physical prints and generally propagating MAGA-based memes wherever possible, both online and in real life. They flooded forums, bombarded message boards and flew their flags in protest in the streets at the downright fascistic behaviour of many of those who so strongly opposed them. People were and are routinely banned for posting even a picture of the Kekistan flag on some sites due to claims it resembled the flag flown by the Nazis. On the contrary, their flag parodies it, changes the colours and symbols and subverts a symbol of evil into one of hilarity and ridicule. Imagine though, how do you think Hitler would have felt about a bunch of centre-right, socialism-loathing trolls using his symbols to represent a group that pranks people, shitposts, and generally causes, for the most part, harmless mischief online? That mono-bald wee cunt would have been fucking raging. Anyway, standard WeirdNet digression. Where were we? In September of 2016, 2 months prior to the election itself, Trump's opponent Hillary Clinton took a shot at Paul and the Kekistanis, while simultaneously falling for the same prank that 4chan themselves had already pulled over a year earlier. She stated that Pepe was a symbol for white supremacists and white nationalists, claiming that anyone who used the image was immediately a racist, and then calling a massive percentage of American voters deplorable. This was not a wise move for many reasons, but it allowed her to get groups like the ADL and others on board with her, having them declare Pepe an official hate symbol, while a bought and paid for media pushed to imprint this as fact. It appears that Clinton was largely responsible for creating the moral outrage over a fucking cartoon frog. Her comments about Pepe were made on the 12th or 13th of September 2016, with the ADL, a group who openly supported her and the Democratic Party, stating that Pepe was officially a hate symbol on the 28th of September. The timing, to me, is just too close for this not to have been 100% political and nothing to do with decency, morality or anti-racism. The fact that the ADL later softened their definition of our innocent frog after the election also suggests that this was manufactured outrage, designed to try to dissuade as many people as possible from contributing to the Great Meme War. Sure, 4chan didn't exactly help matters since they enjoyed creating the most offensive versions of Pepe and then posting them in places where they knew they would get a reaction, for example, Clinton's own social media. Their previous work to prevent normies from acquiring Pepe had, in many ways, come back to bite them in the arse, but in typical shitposting fashion, they simply didn't give a fuck and instead embraced it, inviting their detractors to attack them over a cartoon so as to point out their gullibility. In the end though, the shitposters were victorious in the Great Meme War as President Donald Trump was elected, to a mix of celebration and outrage depending on which side of the fence you were on. I figure it'd be worth stopping at this point for a break, as it's a lot of information to take in at one time. We've covered, hopefully in a decent chronological order, the basics of how Kek came to be, the development of Pepe from innocent amphibian to official hate symbol, and how a New York businessman of curious hue came to be idolised by an online message board. All in all, it's a weird tale in itself, but it just gets stranger the more we look into it, especially when we look at suggestions of magic, divine communications, and the possibility that, yes, memes online did indeed influence the election of a man who most considered to be unelectable. Remember how I said it was going to get weirder? You ain't seen nothing yet. From this point on, I would expect everyone to be as skeptical as possible as it gets pretty fucking wild. Reality is weirder than you can even imagine, and I mean that literally. Whether you believe that it's possible to influence events in real life through magical means or not, reality appears to be more malleable and probabilistic than solid or absolute. While I tend to apply Occam's razor to most things, sometimes synchronicities arise that give me cause to consider alternative models of the experience. As we'll see, many curious coincidences occurred from the time that Donald Trump declared his intentions to run, but let's start with something historically verifiable and we can tread out into deeper waters from there. As mentioned earlier, one scholarly anon discovered an interesting connection between 4chan's favourite frog and the now commonplace Kek. It turned out that the early Egyptians, like 27th century BCE early, worshipped a god called Kek who, as you've probably guessed, was represented as a frog-headed figure. I'll go into a bit more detail on the history and symbolism of Kek as it may prove useful further down the line and allow us to maintain perspective when it comes to some of the seemingly inexplicable synchronicities involved. Kek was part of the Ogdod of Hermopolis, a group of 8 creator gods and goddesses thought to be responsible for the creation of the universe. The Ogdod is one of the oldest groups of Egyptian deities, referred to by renowned scholar E.A. Wallace Budge as the original company of gods, and having parallels with the ancient Babylonian Enuma Elish, the oldest known creation myth. Kek represented the darkness before creation, obscurity, night, and the primordial chaos from which the universe arose. The hieroglyph of Kek itself roughly translates to bringer in of the light or raiser up of the light, and Kek represented the period of darkness before the dawn and the birth of the sun. So while we can view Kek as a god of darkness, it's a very specific kind of darkness, one pregnant with the possibilities of a brand new day, a creative, womb-like darkness from which life emerges. As with the other gods and goddesses of the Ogdoad, Kek was simply the male generative aspect of a naturally genderless force. The female receptive aspect, Keket, was always present too, providing balance and shown with a snake's head rather than a frog. Though represented in male and female forms, Kek was neither here nor there, neither this nor that. The amphibious form reflected this symbolism, since frogs were neither exclusively land dwellers nor exclusively water dwellers, so they occupied this weird place between being one thing and being another. They represented rebirth and transformation, but also uncertainty and the unknown. As Egypt grew and developed, so too did their pantheons as Kek and Keket developed into Heket, the fertility goddess represented as a frog and said to have breathed life into the newborn Horus and the mysteries of Osiris. Heket was said to rule over the annual flooding of the Nile, itself symbolic of birth and fertility, as the flood allowed for the germination of the crops and thus food and trade for the people. In her role as midwife, she was said to be responsible for the final moments of birth, just before the child came into the world, just as Kek was responsible for the darkness before the dawn, just before the sun came up. As you can probably tell, I am no historian or Egyptologist, so I'm aware that my identification of Kek with Heket may be inaccurate. However, the symbolism involved, to me, is too similar to say with any certainty that there's no direct connection between the two. Both are represented by the same amphibian, symbolise similar things and have their origins in the same area of Egypt, so again, just in my opinion, it makes sense to identify Heket and Kek as being, if not the same thing, then certainly personifications of similar archetypal forces present in the human experience. Furthermore, the whole prophecy of Kek thing with the frog statue showing what appears to be an individual sitting in front of a computer is actually a representation of Heket, and the hieroglyphs spell out her name. Is it coincidence? Is it synchronicity? Who knows? Anons came to identify Pepe as being a modern avatar of Kek, building an entirely new mythology around him and naming themselves Kekistanis, shitposters from the land of Kek, exiled by normies for their dank memes, trolling and general mischief. While the modern Anon version of Kek differs from the original Egyptian deity in many ways, the basics remain the same. Still represented as a frog, Kek now has come to represent something more similar to the Greek idea of Eris, the goddess of chaos who caused all sorts of mischief over a golden apple. The modern day Kek is less the creator and more the disruptor, throwing all sorts of mimetic noise into the mainstream and causing chaos, destroying the existing norms and giving rise to new forms of reality. Rather than simply adopting the original mythology, Kekistanis have developed their own and have fractured off into offshoots over the last 2 years. Politically, most Kekistanis seem more interested in shitposting than actual politics, while others specifically identify as alt-right. This has led to people erroneously believing that all Kekistanis are some sort of hate-mongering, racist motherfuckers who want to see brown people dead. They don't. In fact, there's plenty of non-white people who identify themselves as Kekistanis. It's literally got nothing to do with skin colour and everything to do with having a laugh at the expense of the people who are so easily offended that they'll ban a cartoon fucking frog. It's hard to pinpoint what Kekistanis believe in aside from free speech and the right to offend and criticise without persecution. The Republic of Kekistan Wikia page existed briefly and contained a weird, bastardised Judeo-Christian mythology involving memes, Pepe, Donald Trump and all sorts of crazy shit, but it was gone when I went to reference it for this video. Basically, there's theories involving this weird holy trinity involving Kek as the father, Pepe as the son, and Trump as the Holy Spirit, but it's so disorganised and chaotic that I couldn't even begin to put it together in any set of basic principles or anything. As far as I've been able to tell, while the cult of Kekistan had certainly been forming slowly beforehand, It was through promotion by YouTube activist Sargon of Akkad in January of 2017 that the Kekistani movement really began to take form. Nowadays, we have everyone from Kekistanis to Groypers, a toad meme similar to Pepe, originally called Easter Toad and apparently first showing up on 4chan around 2015 via a user called Big Dog Groyper, hence the name. They too have been erroneously tarred as alt-right symbols, with several sites doing preemptive hit pieces on something that, until they claimed it was true, actually had little to do with politics at all, just like Pepe. It's true that some people who express politically incorrect views do use Pepe and Groyper to represent themselves. But as I've said, it'd be unfair to label everyone who does as a racist or whichever other pejorative is in fashion nowadays. Now, ancient Egyptian deities and online cults are weird, sure, but it's in what some refer to as esoteric Kekism that we really get into a truly peculiar place. As I've mentioned before, there were several intriguing synchronicities that arose from the time of Trump declaring his intent to run for president through to the current day, so let's take a look more into the murky world of meme magic. One of the central things in the whole drama that unfolded over the course of the 2016 election campaign was the use of what some called meme magic. Now, to really get where meme magic comes from requires a quick diversion back to Britain in the late 1970s and, ironically given the context, a postmodernist take on the Western mystery tradition and systems of mystical attainment. The creators of what became known as chaos magic, Phil Hine and Peter Carroll, inspired by 20th century occultist and painter Austin Osman Spare, wanted to strip away all the pomp and ceremony from ritual magic and reduce it to a set of psycho-spiritual tools. They laid the groundwork for what I refer to as freestyle magic, using the techniques from various, even conflicting traditions to affect an outcome. There's a lot more to it than this, obviously, but let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in a video going further into that and its development into the modern online world of the occult. But back to the story. Spare, an interesting character in himself, developed the use of sigils into a very simple, easily applied method. Rather than having to dress in ceremonial garbs, burn incense and banish your circle, the outcome required was written down, condensed into a symbolic form through removing duplicate letters and combining their shapes, and then charged through, typically masturbation, but also through intense bursts of emotion or the complete silencing of mind. The point is to insert the symbol into your unconscious mind and then forget about it. So there's a sleight of mind required that many fail in applying and thus fail in seeing any outcome. Furthermore, one of the key principles of chaos magic involves probability pathways, creating opportunities for your desire to manifest rather than just sitting back and waiting for the universe to wipe your arse for you. This brings us to one of the more interesting aspects of the entire story. Part of successful magic involves being attuned to your moment-by-moment experience and being aware of opportunities when they arise. It's too complicated to go into the details right now, but one of the typical ways in which magical results manifest, or at least provide an indication of how best to proceed, is through the occurrence of synchronicities. Seemingly unconnected coincidences that have meaning to the person perceiving them. It was the sheer number of synchronicities involved between the anons of 4chan, Pepe, Kek and Donald Trump that would provide just enough to suggest that there was more afoot than pure chance here. I'll try to provide a list of as many as I can here and give a wee bit of detail, debunking it if it's really absurd, but otherwise presenting the facts as they are. The Pepe the Frog Faith WordPress site lists the earliest known coincidence or synchronicity, I'll leave it up to you to decide, involving Donald Trump. In 2002, Donald Trump's real estate tycoon game was developed by a company called Red Cap, and in the game, there's a company called Pepe. Was it prescience? Was it retroactive magic? Who knows? There's a clip of Trump on The Apprentice talking about Pepe, but to be honest, I think it's a real stretch to consider it a synchronicity. He's certainly not talking about a frog and seems to be talking about a guy he just fired, so it's probably wishful thinking that it has any major significance. On the 19th of June 2016, One Anon posted an image of Pepe to 4chan simply saying Trump will win. Now, to understand why this post would become significant, I need to briefly go into the way 4chan posts work, so bear with me because this will give you a laugh. Due to the anonymous posting in 4chan, each post is given an 8-digit number rather than a name. This led to Anons developing a game of sorts where they aimed to get the same numbers for the last 2 digits, for example 44 or 11. When someone posts and gets the last 2 digits the same, this is referred to as dubs. By the same process, we also get trips, quads, etc., referred to as a whole as gets. Since a get is random, no one can predict when they'll get one. So people constantly post specifically get-related images in the hopes that they'll land the right numbers. There's no prize aside from the pride of a get, but the Pepe Trump will win post didn't just have dubs, it was all 7s. A number that would become sacred to Kekistanis later, but also had its own occult significance to those who saw it as divinatory. The use of numbers or symbols for the purposes of affecting or reading reality is widespread in mystical traditions, for example the I Ching. So to then see Trump go on and win led many to believe that somehow Kek was communicating with them or giving a signal as to what lies ahead. Again, I'll leave this all to your own critical thinking and questioning, so don't take what I see as absolute fact. Obviously we've already looked at the ancient Egyptian god Kek, itself a significant synchronicity. As I'd mentioned too, there exists a statue that's been referred to as the Prophecy of Kek, which shows a frog perched atop a pedestal, inscribed with a curious set of symbols. I've explained briefly that the symbols actually translate to Heket, who I suggest is a more refined, anthropomorphised version of Kek and Keket, but admittedly, it does look like someone sitting at a computer screen. The similarity alone is funny, even if it's nothing more than coincidence. The discovery of this small statue led to the consolidation of the Church of Kek, as it seemed to some that they may have inadvertently evoked this ancient god and that they'd found a real sacred object. There's been speculation that meme magic led to the collapse of Hillary Clinton in 2016 on 9/11, but speculation it remains. On the same day though, one of the most hilarious synchronicities was discovered that would give Kekistan an anthem, as well as a new shibboleth of their very own. One Anon stumbled across the 1986 Italo disco track Shadalay by Pepe, whose full name was actually Manuel Pepe. The track itself was attributed to Pepe, spelled P-E-P-E, meaning point emerging, probably entering, which Anons and Kekistanis took to refer to everything from the get process to the revelation of Kek through Pepe and Donald Trump. The artwork on the vinyl single featured a big green frog, adding to the synchronicities relating to the track, with the track title itself becoming a greeting between fellow Kekistanis. On top of all that, the track time itself is 5:55, thus a get. Styx Hexenhammer 666 on YouTube, go check him out, he's a good guy with a good balanced opinion on the current political and social climate, also points out how the 5s are, in Kabbalistic terms, related to the Sephirah of Geburah, itself represented by the colour red, just like Trump's hats, as well as representing might and judgment. Tying the whole thing together, the frog shown on the vinyl is also brandishing a wand and represents the record label Magic Sound. Something else curious, but probably unrelated, is the mention of the word Jubal on the vinyl. Some have speculated that it has something to do with jubilance or jubilation, but I would suggest that it may be more interesting to look at the use of the word within Freemasonry, as Jubal is an important figure in their mythology. He was said to have founded the science of music, which is most likely the reason for the word's inclusion on the record. It still keeps it in the weird, mystical territory, but is less Kek-related than it may seem. All in all, there's a lot of weird and mysterious roads we could explore as part of this. I had originally planned a 2-parter, going into a lot more detail on the magical stuff, but it would just be information overload. I've tried to provide the verifiable facts involved in how the current Church of Kek came about, and skim over what's known as esoteric Kekism. I'm sure those interested will be able to find out more, as the whole Kekism thing is mutating and growing constantly, so it's hard right now to pinpoint any specific ideology or adherence to any one system. Sites like the Pepe the Frog Faith WordPress are pretty good, and the more alt-right focused Cult of Pepe site has some stuff, but if you want more than the specifics in this video, then you'll really need to go to the source and hit the chance. Right, first up, Kekism, Kekistan, the Kekistani flag and the people of Kek are not fucking racist or any sort of hate mongers. They're shitposters, many of whom identify in the real world as everything from right-leaning to liberalist to outright anarchists. Yes, some people who identify as alt-right and other fringe groups will identify themselves as being Kekistanis too, just as many terrorists identify as Muslims. In the same way, we shouldn't judge the many on the basis of the actions of the few. But that's another conversation for another time and another place though. But I just wanted to be clear on the basic fact that Kekistanis and shitposters aren't the digital political extremists that they are made out to be. The birth and development of Kek from meme to egregore is bizarre. It's almost like we're seeing the creation of a new archetype in the human psyche. Something like the classic Fool of the Tarot, but for the age of information where we are neither this nor that by default online. By that, I mean how our online personality could be considered to be androgynous until we declare that we're either male or female, so perhaps Kek represents this in some way. This is pure speculation on my part, just to be clear, so take it with a pinch of salt. I tend towards a more optimistic view of Kek in the present day. Rather than being a destroyer or obscurer in the literal sense, I consider the force represented as being one of chaos and change, a Kali-like destroyer, but one who makes way for rebirth on a higher level of functioning. Who knows, I could talk about this stuff for hours, but I'll wrap it up here for the moment and say thank you for taking the time to watch this unintentionally long video. I hope I've managed to dispel some myths, provide some information and offer at least a reasonably balanced view on a genuinely harmless group who, given the opportunity, may well go on to be a positive force in the coming years. Take care of yourselves. Please like and subscribe and follow me on Twitter, Gab and BitChute. I'll be uploading to other places soon and starting a regular blog on something like Steemit, but I'll keep you updated anyway. Until next time, keep it weird.